Welcome to Identified.
I mean, family for me, I think way back in the day, I have my biological family, and then I definitely had my friends were my family.
Yeah.
And I loved having that kind of ship of orphans feel with friends, even though we all had parents. But in a way, many of my friends, when they were coming of age and for many years after in their adulthood, felt estranged from their parents. So their friends were very much their family. They were the people that they dealt with every day.
Hello, I'm Nabil Ayers, author, music executive, and host of Identified, the podcast that delves deep into the complex world of family and identity. In this episode, my guest is the comedian, actor, and musician, Reggie Watts, who recently published his memoir, Great Falls, Montana, Fast Times, Post-Punk Weirdos, and a Tale of Coming Home Again. Reggie and I first met when we lived in Seattle at the same time and played in different bands in the early 2000s. Both of our memoirs explore growing up as a biracial kid in a white town. And just like me, Reggie moved a lot as a kid. For Reggie, though, it was due to his dad's military career. I was excited to learn more about Reggie's life before the years we spent in Seattle. Stay tuned to learn what family means to Reggie. He talks about his need to be unapologetically himself and how his friends have been his family over the years, especially those who felt estranged from their parents. Here's my conversation with Reggie. So how old were you when you moved from where? From Germany to Montana? Is that right?
Germany, yeah.
Yeah. What age?
3.5 or 4.
Oh, okay, so super young. So do you remember the actual move, or is that too far back?
I don't know if I remember the move. I remember some moments in Spain where we were stationed for a while after I was born. There was definitely some memories. I don't remember the actual, like, hey, we're going to Montana. But I do remember when we first got to the motel, though. I do have that memory.
Wow. And
just, like, our family kind of looking around inside and so forth. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting the way you put it, that your family didn't change, but your surroundings changed when you moved there.
Yes.
What did that feel like?
Well, I mean, it feels weird because you don't have a house for a second, and that feeling of not having a house or a home is, it wasn't very long for me to have that feeling, but, because for the most part, when my dad would get stationed, they'd be there for at least a year, so you got, like, kind of a year to feel out of place,
Right.
Yeah, and then getting to Montana was just kind of it was less time. It was like maybe, 4 months or something like that before we got to be in our house, 4 or 5 months.
Right, and then you were like there.
Yeah.
Right.
And then we were in that same house I own today.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Do you spend time there?
Yeah, I was just there at the end of my book tour. Yeah, and it was a trip to be there. Fun, to go back to the house that I grew up in and feel what that feels like. I mean, it still smells the same, looks the same. I'm not going to remodel it or anything like that. It's just going to keep it the way it is.
Because you have happy memories.
Yeah.
Time.
Yeah. I might declutter a little bit, but that's about it.
Right.
Pretty cool.
Are there like family traditions or things that you remember growing up in that house? Like things that happened every year or any kind of rituals?
Not many rituals other than just Christmas and Thanksgiving. There would always be escargot.
And would you only have escargot those 2 times each year? So it's special in that way.
Yeah, like I knew that we're definitely getting snails. And I was very excited about that because I like snails.
It's a delicacy, right?
Yeah, it's very good. It's very hardcore, though. I'd feel safer eating it if I were working out all the time.
Where did you get those in Montana?
I don't know. Either a specialty food shop, either my mom had ordered them, or she brought them back from one of our trips.
Right.
To France. Yeah, it's this company, Ugma, that makes them. And they're in like little, like tuna fish cans or whatever. If she brought like 8 cans over, that's like 3 years worth or 4 years worth. Whatever the math is.
Yeah, twice a year. When you were growing up in Montana, I guess maybe like especially in your teen years during like the awkward times, were there times when you felt like your family was different or that you didn't fit in?
That my family didn't fit in?
Yeah.
No, I didn't really notice that at all. Everything was pretty solid on that tip.
That's great.
But for me, I don't know, I just felt like whatever I was, but I had like these really cool fucking sick friends.
Right. I mean, you sort of found the outcasts,
the
cool people.
Yeah. And it just was like, felt like a badass crew, everyone loved each other and like, it's great. Like just like the perfect mix of like, you knew it was cool, even though you're a bunch of nerds or whatever. But objectively, I would still say to this day, I would say, we look pretty fucking cool.
Do you have pictures?
There's pictures in my book, it's just like, we were trying shit, mohawks and like waved over hair and like fucking preppy jackets and pens and shit or whatever, or like just shredded up stuff, or just old man thrift store style, or baby doll look Victorian goth, lots of pale paints. Anyways, there was a kind of not fitting in, but it was more like I'm conscious of me not fitting in, at least to the norm, and it's different projecting it rather than feeling, I feel weird,
right.
But
it was all about finding the other people that felt like that, and that's
true.
That's what brought you together, right?
Yes.
Is that you didn't fit in with the norm.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And so I guess in numbers, you kind of develop this healthy way of basically saying, like, hey, be proud of who you are.
Right.
Like rock your shit. like just go out there and fucking rock shit.
What was it that brought you guys together that like united? Was it music? Was it fashion? Was it sports? I mean, like when you're a teenager, it was, what is it? Smoking pot,
it
cigarettes?
Can be, it's not a lot, but it's definitely a variation or a combination. I think it was music. I think the music was a big thing. It was like everybody that hung out in our group were definitely post-punk, punk.
It's in the title.
Industrial, yeah, and experimental. Art of noise, arguably, I would say, is not necessarily, you don't listen to it and go. Right.
It was weird in the 80s in Montana.
It's so fucking crazy. And it's like a bowl of Fruit Loops. It's anyways. Yeah, but the music for sure, because people were listening to that, and I thought that the girls in that scene just looked the coolest. Like if it was like Breakfast Club or whatever, it would be It would be Ali Sheedy. Even though I love,
Susie of
I would do Ali Sheedy because the Ali
Totally.
Sheedy, she's interesting, she's fucking creative, she's weird, she's like hard to get in, and she's mysterious. I mean, come on, man, that's all shit. That's just hot.
Totally. Now I can just see the Ali Sheedy Breakfast Club. Right? That's like the hair thing onto the the dandruff onto the snow.
Sketch. It's so cool, man. It's so cool. That movie was like, I don't know. I haven't seen it in a long time, but in my nostalgia, whatever, immersive brain portion of my memory, that it felt so cool.
But that is cool. That's sort of what you're talking about. Like in a way, I mean, I haven't seen that movie in years, but I remember seeing it. It was new, and like those people were all from super different worlds, and the whole thing was that over the course of the day, they sort of became a family because they were stuck there first of all, and they didn't have much in common, but they found the certain things that they did, and that's what brought them together.
Yeah, that's what I loved. It was like, and that was like what I sought in high school, like that camaraderie. What was interesting about that, and I always sought it in other groups too. It didn't have to be just like the fucking weird bat cave, like borderline Hesher crew, like it's not, I would want anybody from any of the circles to come party with us if they were like really cool or whatever. And there were like jocks, that some jocks were kind of weirdo jocks, and they would come out and they would hang with us sometimes.
That's kind of what Salt Lake was like too. I mean, I think I was like a fairly normal kid, but like everyone sort of hung out at my high school. It was a big 2,000 person high school, and it wasn't like the jocks beating up the nerds or the goths or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I remember parties just like, this is rad. Everyone's here.
Whoa.
And it wasn't that strange. And it wasn't that strange being a biracial kid in a super white place. It all just kind of was like cool.
Right. Yeah. No, I hear you. I mean, that was basically the same in Great Falls. It didn't feel weird. I felt like I was me. Yeah. And that's what people were speaking to.
Right.
That was most of the time. Because I think like the secret is like if you're just you and you're unapologetically yourself, people can't come at you any other way. You're giving them full resolution information. So it's hard for someone to come up with some other shit and not get into disagreements with people about that. And it's more fun to just be like, like that person's great. And then we're done. Yeah. And moving on.
Right,
That's interesting. Oh, by the way, I told, who was in SLC Punk?
Oh, I don't know.
Matthew Lillard.
I don't know. I mean, I remember the movie, but I don't even know who was in it.
So Matthew Lillard.
He's in it.
He's in it. Okay. He's the main dude.
Oh.
He was at a party recently, and I came up to him and I just told him like, hey, SLC Punk to me was one of the last great coming of age films concerning like punk, rock. He was like, "Oh, thanks, man," because he was finishing another conversation. So he was there for a little bit, and then he turned back around and he goes, "Hey, man, I just want to really thank you for saying that about this film. It's like, I don't hear that kind of feedback from me." And I'm like, it was a very important film. Like, it was a very effective coming of age film that outlined a time in a place that a lot of surrounding states can identify with.
Yeah, totally right.
It was dope, and I thought he was great. And he was like, man, it was just cool. Like, it was good to see him, like, genuinely, like, I'm so glad, because I think he thought that too.
Oh, right, but he doesn't hear it enough.
Yeah, and he doesn't hear it enough.
Yeah.
And I'm like, SLC Punk is like, I put it up there with Suburbia.
Right.
You know?
I mean, people bring it up all the time when I say that I'm from Salt Lake, or that I lived in Salt Lake. And what's fun, I mean, that was just a few years. I was a few years younger than he was supposed to be in the film, I think. But like all those places and shows, the Indian Center, that's all like, it's all real. Those are all, that's where Black Flag and Dead Kennedys played, like all that stuff. It's really weird to feel like connected to it.
Oh, man. Yeah. That's sick. Yeah, so it's kind of cool to have like a thing about you're growing up. Yeah, that's like, oh, that's true. That's pretty accurate.
It was there.
Yeah.
Have you experienced much grief or loss in your family?
I mean, when there was loss, the grieving was very strange. I mean, I think my mom and dad they weren't really emotional in that way that much in the house. My mom, sometimes, I saw her cry a few times, but not a lot. And I don't think she was afraid to cry. I don't think that's it. I think she just was an internal processor, which is kind of what I am, for sure. Even though I'm learning now, like, if you are an internal processor, that does not discount you or doesn't dismiss you from developing communication skills so that other people know what the fuck's going on.
You can do both.
You can do both. Yeah, you can do both. And so that's something I'm learning now, which has been incredibly helpful. And I think my dad, he was just very closed off. So I didn't really, their reaction to loss, maybe it happened and I haven't remembered it again. Like, maybe I remember my dad crying. I think I have heard my dad cry once because I can hear what it would sound like. But I haven't really thought about that in a really long time. But that, so his mother died, the grandpa died, or my dad's stepdad died. And then my mom's brother died, and because she lost her father and mother much later or earlier, in the 80s. And then I went to my grandmother's funeral. But I don't remember what it felt like. I don't remember it feeling like everything was ripped out of me, or even like being there when my mother died. Like I didn't really feel like a loss in the way I think of when people say loss.
Right, what you're supposed to feel.
Yeah, what you're supposed to feel, like how it's supposed to just rip you apart, or what have you, something like that. While I can completely imagine that, and I can imagine myself reacting like that 100%. I don't think I'm unable to, but in this particular case, like, it was very weird. It just felt hyper strange. And now there's like many moments of sadness because I miss her. So it's more about, but in that moment when it happened, it wasn't really, it didn't really feel like a loss per se. It feels like I'm realizing how much I will miss her, which is a form of loss.
Right, like it's a process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the closest I've had in my life. Not really with friends or anything like that.
Yeah. What is family to you?
I like it. That's a good question there. Well, I figure on thinking it's at least one aunt, one uncle. No, no, I think, family for me, I think way back in the day, I have my biological family, and then I definitely had my friends were my family.
Yeah.
And I loved having that kind of ship of orphans feel with friends, even though we all had parents. But in a way, many of my friends, when they were coming of age and for many years after in their adulthood, felt estranged from their parents. So their friends were very much their family. They were the people that they dealt with every day and did all these things for every day. So I think that sensibility is true. But I would definitely say my friends. I count my mom and my dad just because you have to. That's just like, it's just part of the rules. Yeah. Like, that's definitely there's no way you're going to, even if you don't like them or you hate them, it's like they're still your family, for sure. But things outward from there, like, cousins, or, I was an only child, so I don't have any siblings, but like cousins, uncles, aunts.
Right.
those are variables, but
Right. Matter less.
yeah, matter less. Yeah, where it's like I appreciate them, but we never formed a bond.
Right,
like,
right.
And family's not enough to make them family in a way.
And then it's the people you've chosen.
Yeah, totally. My circles of friends are very, weird. Weird in that the way that we just come into each other's lives kind of driftily, and when we enter each other's minds and things like that.
Right.
And sometimes there are times where you're seeing them a lot, and then they just span. I'm not describing anything that most people don't feel, but I do definitely always feel like there's another way that friendships can be had, but that I'm just doing it in a different way or a weird way for some reason. Anyways, that's the way I've always felt.
Thanks for tuning in. Please consider subscribing to Identified wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss an episode. And be sure to check out Identified on YouTube and identifiedpod.com, where you can watch videos from our interviews. Our executive producer is Kieron Banerji, and the show is produced by Palm Tree Island. The music for Identified is by Noella and Patricia Brennan. I'm Nabil Ayers. Thanks for tuning in.